Speaking of rock stars, I get to introduce our next speaker, and I cannot wait for you to hear from Kim-Schaad. She is a mental performance coach with Fearless Golf. She works with golfers across abilities and ages, including the PGA Professional Tour. As former captain of the Northwestern University golf team, she went on to work in finance and then returned to golf after an 11-year hiatus. Since then, she's won numerous championships, including the 2019 Mid-Amateur Championship, which won her an exemption to play in the 2020 U.S. Open. She has such a unique insight to share with you this morning, and I'm delighted to introduce Ina. Welcome. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. A little bright up here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me. That was a very kind and thorough introduction from Stacy. I am truly honored to be here amongst you women today who really, by virtue of being here, you are initiating the civic change and leadership that you want to see in this world today. So, congrats to you. I'm really inspired just by being here and meeting so many of you. So, as Stacy mentioned, I took quite a bit of time off of golf and kind of entered the world of finance and really enjoyed my time there. When I decided to go back into golf, after 11 years, my physical game actually came back a lot quicker than I expected. But I was winning all these tournaments and was having this outward success. But my internal game and my happiness on the golf course left much to be desired. I found myself really anxious and self-critical, so much so that I very reluctantly sought out the help of world-renowned sports psychologist, Dr. Gio Valiante. He helped shed light on my outlook, my feelings, and my anxiety. He helped me reframe my life, my adventure, and my opportunities. I'm really honored and humbled that he is now my mentor and business partner, and I really have the privilege of getting to work with golfers all around the world and improve their performance and happiness, both on and off the golf course. Today, we're gonna cover 3 topics. Number 1, passion, your why. Number 2, confidence, and the building blocks of that confidence, what we call self-efficacy. And number 3, our framing of success and failure. Ultimately, how we frame the majority of our issues tends to determine what follows. So let's understand the frame. I'm going to start with a scenario. Picture a young girl, 10 years old. She just got her first set of golf clubs. She's so excited to get out there and play and practice. She wants to elevate her skills, to play, and to challenge herself. Her reward is a time she gets to spend in the beautiful outdoors. She gets to effortfully work on her craft, and she gets to experience these small, incremental gains every day. She relishes the first birdie she ever makes. And eventually, she starts to improve. Before she knows it, she's winning tournaments. Very exciting. As she starts winning, she starts noticing she gets a little bit more attention from people at the club. And she gets some compliments from her peers at high school when she's walking down the hallway. The nice man at the golf club deli, he even gave her a free hot dog and a soda to congratulate her for her latest victory. Slowly, almost indiscernibly, this young girl starts playing and practicing with her eyes set on victory and glory. The rewards, the compliments, the attention, and the praise for her good play start to become more important than the good play itself. Her world has shifted ever so slightly and completely unbeknownst to her. A few years later, she's in a slump, and she can't figure out why. Now lay this narrative over any domain, tennis, chess, science fair, coding competitions, figure skating, debate team. And as we get older, the stakes just get higher. CEO, politician, entrepreneur, designer, scientist, hedge fund manager. This motivational shift, your why, it's universal and completely domain agnostic. We begin doing something for the love of the challenge, and the world conditions us to love the externalities, the money, the praise, and the glory, more than the work itself. Now, before I get into my explanation as to why this girl is in a slump, let me back up and talk to you a bit about human wiring and evolution. We humans evolved as a tribal people. We gathered, we hunted, and we protected our land and property as a tribe. It was of utmost importance to be accepted in the tribe, as being ousted or ostracized meant certain death. So, as we evolved over the millennia, the wiring in our brains became stronger and stronger for survival to need and want other people's acceptance, admiration, and approval. It is a basic instinct that's so baked into us that we're unaware that it's even happening. Now, going back to our young junior golfer, she started golf and worked so hard at it because of her intrinsic love of the game. But slowly, over time, her motivation started to shift extrinsically. It starts innocently enough, a compliment by another member, a nice story in the local newspaper, all of which is fine because research does show it's important to feel important in one's tribe. The praise and success can feel so good that they can override most everything else, including the very love that created the success in the first place. The problem happens when this snowflake gains momentum and becomes an avalanche, because after every round of golf, people continue to remind you that what matters are the results. The first two questions after every round of golf for pretty much every golfer are, how'd you play and what'd you shoot, right? Now, say for the competitive golfer, this happens 5 days a week from 5 different people. Over the course of a single year, the high-level golfer is literally reminded that results matter more than the journey over 1,000 times. Psychologists put human motivation, our why, into 2 categories: mastery orientation and ego orientation. A mastery orientation is similar to what we all know to be intrinsic motivation. When people are driven by love of the game or field of work, for the challenge, for the desire to improve incrementally, passion, curiosity, interest, fun, excitement, and love of mastering their craft, they're said to be driven by a mastery orientation. Mastery-oriented people, they lose track of time. They get lost in the details, and they enjoy the journey, even when the path is bumpy. When things don't go perfectly, they react with curiosity, trying to solve the puzzle in front of them. They know that obstacles can lead to breakthroughs. Allow me to juxtapose that with ego orientation. An ego orientation is similar to what we all know to be extrinsic motivation. This type of motivation happens when people are driven by impressing others, winning accolades or money, and anything else that bolsters the ego. Their measuring stick is against others, whether they know it or not, rather than appreciating their own personal journey. Whenever we put our egos on the line, our sense of who we are as people, it becomes a very high-stakes game of internal self-worth. Failure at the craft can devolve into failure as a human being. In many cases, a bad result can be so painful because of what we think it tells us about ourselves. We all know that passing thought, I didn't just lose the contract, I'm a loser in life. In golf, these sorts of negative emotions are the difference between hitting your drive straight down the fairway or slicing it into the trees. To be honest, ego orientation actually works perfectly fine when confidence is high. This is why you see some athletes or performers with huge entourages surrounding them, bathing them in confidence and security. The problem comes when confidence dips, and it always inevitably dips, because confidence is not a constant, it's a variable. So when confidence goes down, ego-oriented people, they become anxious, stressed, tense, and fearful. They react to failure with embarrassment, anger, and sorrow, rather than the earnest curiosity we saw with mastery orientation. Pretty soon, the ego-oriented golfer, or tennis player, or politician or CEO is working purely to avoid failure and embarrassment, as opposed to working to do the best they possibly can. If your top priority is image management, you're not worried about absolute performance, but failure avoidance. Major League Baseball Hall of Famer Lou Brock famously said, "Show me a guy who's afraid to look bad, and I'll show you a guy you can beat every time." Believe it or not, even the highest level professional athletes we work with struggle with this. Our society is so results-oriented, so sensationalized, and externally incentivized that it's nearly impossible to stay within ourselves. Imagine if you had to perform with a live billboard-sized scoreboard broadcasting your score and position against everyone else at all times. Plus, all cumulative season performance is based on your ranking and earnings. And your job stability is also entirely dependent upon those results. Not only that, athletes tend to, over time, perceive their job as their identity, and their whole self-worth comes under attack when they aren't performing well. We are constantly helping our professional athletes to reorient their lives back to their childhood selves, to rediscover their why, and build an impenetrable bubble around themselves to shield against the societal influences that constantly try to bait us into ego orientation. Imagine how the CEO of a publicly traded company would react if she were reminded of the stock price every 20 minutes. What about a politician who was reminded about her poll standings every half hour? Would each of these leaders make good long-term decisions? So we know now that both society and evolution conspire to undermine our love of our work, to overweight what others think of us, and to condition us into ego orientation. That's the bad news. The good news is we can fight this. The first step is to get clarity on your why, as in, why do you do what you do? I've got a quick exercise for everybody here. Please pull out a pen and paper and take a minute right here, right now, to revisit your own why. Make a list, brainstorm, free association, whatever comes to your mind, just jot it down, and truly ask yourself, why do you do what you do? Let's take a minute here. Awesome. Understanding your underlying motivation is critical to deciphering your actions and reactions, and ultimately, your results. All motivation, however, is not created equal. For example, fear is known to be a very powerful yet not very effective form of motivation. The fear of losing status or stature that accompanies an ego orientation can easily trigger defensive, protective, and loss-aversive behavior. These people are highly motivated to avoid failure because their ego feels under attack, but they are not necessarily channeling their energy in the right direction. In 2011, Pope and Schweitzer of Wharton published results of a study they conducted on the PGA Tour of over 2.5 million putts. I hope there's some golfers out here who understand what putts are. They found that from every distance equalized, these professional golfers were more successful for their par putts than their birdie putts. The difference in the rate of success for par versus birdie was 3.6%, which may not sound like a terrible difference. But if we took just one player from that sample group, Tiger Woods, who was a participant in the study, when translated into real results, he would have had his average tournament score decrease by 1 stroke per tournament, which would have equated to $1 million more in earnings for that season. And that's just one player. So imagine the difference for the entire field, and then compound that over a career rather than one season. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Now, you won't be surprised now to hear that we, as a people, are attracted to others with whom we share common values and beliefs, with whom we share a sense of belonging. It's a part of our tribal evolution that we discussed earlier. There's even a name for this phenomenon, known as homophily, as the idiom, birds of a feather flock together. This is also precisely why the most successful companies or ventures in the world clearly communicate their why. Not their what or how, but their why. Tesla is a perfect example. They were not the first or even the second electric car to market, but they were certainly the best at communicating their why. Consumers identify with their mission. They live and breathe the clean energy they're trying to democratize. Whereas other car manufacturers seem to be merely conforming to the market as a necessity of competitive evolution, Tesla has carved out a clear mission and identity that consumers want to share in. And that is precisely why the company has the largest valuation of automakers at over $1 trillion, while the entire market cap of automakers 2 through 7 combined are less than Tesla on its own. And we're not talking about small guppies here. We've got Toyota, Volkswagen, Daimler, and GM in that list of 2 through 7. It's pretty crazy. Now, other companies that have been successful at communicating their why, for example, are Apple, Southwest Airlines, and Harley-Davidson. They are lifestyles that people identify with, and they need to be a part of. That sense of tribal belonging and shared goals. Homophily. Now let's take a moment to think about your achievement domain, whether it be golf, the boardroom, the courtroom, the trading floor, or whatever your occupation may be. Go back to your why. Why did you get into this line of work in the first place? Get your why straight and make that shift back to mastery orientation with a reinvigorated mission to return to your true motivation and roots. Research shows that across almost all walks of life, a mastery approach leads to deeper cognitive processing, better memory, more internal happiness, and ultimately, and paradoxically, better results. Mastery orientation also promotes resilience, gratitude, motivation, and the ability to more easily enter a flow state, also known as the zone. Now that we've covered our why and reframed ourselves back to a mastery orientation, let's talk about what, in my world, is the single most important psychological variable there is: confidence. Confidence matters because it is inversely related to depression, it is inversely related to anxiety, and it is positively related to self-esteem, and ultimately affects all of the psychological dominoes that lead to good or bad results. From a statistical perspective, men aren't just more confident than women. They're also more overconfident. In a now well-known study, I believe Kim referenced, quoted often in literature such as Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, Hewlett-Packard once did an internal survey that found that men apply for a job or promotion when they met only 60% of the qualifications, while women only apply when they meet 100% of the qualifications. Columbia Business School professor Ernesto Rubin in 2011 coined the term honest overconfidence, after he found in a study that men overestimated their achievements in this test by 30%. But they truly believed it. Whereas women tended to overestimate their achievements by 15%. That's just a rounding error, right? However, once a monetary incentive was introduced and the teams had to elect leaders based on their stated achievements, women were selected a third less often than men were due to their tendency to under-exaggerate as compared to their male counterparts, who, again, truly believed that their actual achievements were 30% better than they actually were. Now, we cannot correct, nor do we want to correct, for our honesty. But how do we tip the scales back? Ultimately, the answer leads us back to the topic of confidence. Now, it is tough, or nearly impossible, to just flip a switch and be confident. We are often led to think that confidence is this elusive state that we either wake up with some mornings or not on other mornings, or we're either born with it or without it. But neither is true. To give some context, there are 3 self-constructs we typically have of ourselves. Self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, we all know that one. Self-concept, how do you view yourself? We also know that one. The least talked about one, but arguably most important, self-efficacy, your confidence in your ability to get things done. Psychological research shows that there are 3 types of experiences that raise or lower our self-efficacy, and the same research shows that we can actually build it from the ground up. The 3 sources of self-efficacy are as follows. Number 1, past experiences, our past successes and failures. Number 2, vicarious experiences, how we compare to our peers. And number 3, verbal persuasions, what people say to us in the form of compliments and criticisms. Now, in aggregate, these 3 things build our confidence, which in turn affect the goals that we set, the effort we put in, the resilience and persistence that we show in the face of obstacles, and ultimately, our achievements. The practical implication is this: cherish all of your victories, big or small, and file them away in your memory bank. Research has also shown that women are more impacted by verbal persuasions and vicarious experiences than men. So what does that ultimately mean for you? Well, if you are a leader or a mentor, it is vitally important that you verbally reinforce to your work staff or mentees your belief in them, their hard work, and their skill sets. On the flip side, know that your words carry more weight than you think. So be constructive with your criticism and offer avenues for them to stretch and to grow. Set attainable goals for them, but also know that you yourself can role model the desired behavior and empower them to know that they can be like you. Women seeing other women like themselves succeed is immensely empowering, way more so than you could possibly imagine. In Daniel Coyle's study of talent hotbeds, published in his book, The Talent Code, Coyle calls this phenomenon ignition. Often, in talent hotbeds, a spark is ignited by the breaking of a barrier and the first glimpse at a new set of possibilities. There's also a sense of future belonging that cements this ignition, that feeling of, I can do this too. This is who I was meant to be. Ignition is the reason we have a whole generation of Korean female golfers after Seri Pak. who are dominating the LPGA, or Russian female tennis players dominating women's tennis after Maria Sharapova. So, in a forum dedicated to leadership, how do we foster and empower a community of women to trailblaze and ignite to be the Sari Pak or Maria Sharapova of your field? Now, there is one often misunderstood caveat that underlies all success stories: failure. Failure is, in my opinion, unjustly maligned in our culture. We forget that failure is a necessary ingredient in our journeys toward success. If you don't fail, you're probably not trying or stretching yourself hard enough. There are countless examples: Steve Jobs, J.K. Rowling, Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Sarah Blakely of Spanx, Michael Jordan, Billie Jean King, Oprah Winfrey. They will all tell you that their failures are what allowed them to succeed beyond their wildest dreams. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Unless you try to do something beyond what you have already mastered, you will not grow." Growth inherently cannot happen in the comfort zone. And it is in this discomfort zone that the growing and the stretching and the failing and the growing more happens. Starbucks did not reach its 5th store opening until 13 years after it first opened. John Wooden didn't win his first national title until his 16th season at UCLA. Ben Hogan didn't win a single time in his first 9 years on tour, and he went broke more than once in those 9 years. He also then went on to win 64 professional tournaments, including 9 majors. Thomas Edison, when asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times when inventing the light bulb, famously said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps." Failure is baked into the recipe of success. Accept this now and embrace the discomfort, embrace the failure, and consequently build your resilience. Your only limits are the ones you give yourself. Now, allow me one final time to return to the story of that young golfer. She started golf and worked hard at it for the love of the game. But over time, it evolved into her running away from failure rather than chasing greatness. If I could say one thing to that young girl, it would be summed up as follows: do it for the love of the craft. Don't listen too much to what other people say. Take in the good and shake off the bad, unless it can teach you something. Be aspirational. And when you encounter failure, which you no doubt will, because it is a vital part of life and learning, let those failures ignite your passion and light your path forward rather than shake your will. For all of you here today, I'd like to challenge you to take that piece of paper that you wrote on today with your why and let that light or reignite your path forward. We were all brought together today by these incredibly thoughtful and passionate women at the Policy Circle who know their whys. As Simon Sinek, author of Know Your Why, wrote, "If we all take some responsibility to start with why and inspire others to do the same, then together we can change the world." I truly believe that, and I hope after this week together at the summit, you do too. Thank you again.
How amazing and inspiring. Ina, thank you so much. I have the privilege of introducing our next panel and our facilitator, Paula Glover. Paula started as president of the Alliance to Save Energy earlier this year, and with more than 25 years of experience in the energy industry, Ms. Glover is the 7th president of the Alliance's 43-year history. Previously, Ms. Glover served as president and CEO of the American Association of Blacks in Energy. I cannot wait for you to hear from this remarkable panel, so I'm going to turn it over to you ladies now.
Thank you.